Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for being here today. Senator Leone, Senator Boucher, is it Senator Guerrero now? Guerrero? Yeah?
We'll make him an honorary one.
Representative Guerrero, Representative Carney, and members of the Transportation
You might as well make me a
Committee.
representative. Someone's got to do the work around here, so what the, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we finish brunch upstairs, we can come down and I am here to testify on a few bills. You have my prepared comments in front of you. I'll just go through the generally because I know you have a busy day. I'd like to start by sharing my strong support on House Resolution number 54, which is concerning the Federal Railroad Administration's proposal to construct a alternative Amtrak route through southeastern Connecticut. In essence, what this proposal does through the Northeast Corridor plan is to create a massive disturbance from Saybrook all the way up to Kenyon, Rhode Island, including digging a tunnel under the Connecticut River, surfacing it through the historic district in the center of Old Lyme, and meandering its way through southeastern Connecticut, finding its way through the center of Mystic and up into Rhode Island. We're hoping that the entire assembly can get behind this resolution and just voice their opposition to this. This is not the days of the Wild West when we had clear open territory to lay track. There is a huge amount of implications both to quality of life, to the environmental needs, to the historic districts, and just to really clear common sense and reason that there should be no reason that this particular resolution should not be supported by everybody and this bypass killed. And we understand the NEC has to provide planning for our transportation future, and I don't think any of the communities are against an upgrade in rail services, but we should be fixing the rail lines that we have and upgrading those and then providing increased commuter. As a result of that resolution, there are two bills before you, Senate number 253 and Senate number 263, which are almost identical in scope, which would provide for a change in rail service to be approved by referendum of communities impacted by such a change. 263 adds that there would be no financial assistance by the state of Connecticut unless there's such a resolution. Now, as I noted in my testimony, this particular bill, which I apologize for, is a little bit broad in its scope, and it shouldn't say commuter rail because we certainly wouldn't want the DOT to have a referendum if they're changing service times by a minute and a half at one station. But this is really designed to go after the large impact that this Federal Railroad Administration would have. And so I would look to the committee for guidance, and certainly we can help provide language that would, narrow that down to a better scope. So that's basically why we're here. I hope that behind me there will be a lot of people testifying against this proposal, and we think that there should be more and serious thought about alternatives and certainly upgrades to our particular track. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to address you today.
Thank you, Senator, for those comments. I was just a little taken back there. I saw someone walk by you, and I just was like a ghost or something of that nature. But it was Mr. Riley. So, nice to see you here, Michael. Now, obviously, this has received a lot of attention, Senator. I know that Representative Carney has been instrumental in trying to help with all this too, and we commend him for all his hard work on this. Yeah, I have some serious concerns about this. Have they met with the group of legislators and senators from that area and representatives and the people in regards to an alternative plan here?
I know that we've had conversations through the federal level. I know Congressman Courtney, Senators Blumenthal and Murphy have been very strong in their opposition on this, and there's been those high-level things. Behind me, First Selectman Reamsider from Old Lyme, and I and Representative Carney had, I think we first talked about this last January, and a series of public meetings have occurred, one of which included an employee from the FRA speaking to a group of the public in Old Lyme, which drew in excess of 500 people, all in opposition from up and down the shoreline. So whatever those conversations the congressmen and the senators have had, hopefully will take effect. There's some talk about handling it at the Transportation Committee level up there and the Appropriations level up there. So, but you never know. If this thing gets in a plan, it's already affected real estate values and people's thinking down there.
Absolutely. And just from what I've read, just the impact alone on some of these communities would be devastating, in my opinion. And I don't even live down in your area, but I can just imagine, like, you know, these curved tracks and just all that just would be horrible. So what do you need from us to make sure that this doesn't happen?
Well, one, I think if we can get behind the resolution that, you know, all of us stand bipartisanly together in opposition of this plan, this portion of the plan, I think that would be a great first step. I know that these types of projects tend to need federal 80%, state 20%, whatever those numbers are, I'm just guessing. But if we could provide a mechanism that doesn't allow that opportunity for that contribution, unless and until every community impacted by this approves it by referendum, you know, that's fine. But, you know, this bypass is expected to save 20 minutes from, you know, New York to Washington to Boston, you know. My suggestion is we invest in plane tickets for those people who need to save that kind of time.
So according from what I read, yeah, the 20 minutes is all they're saving.
Yes, that's my understanding.
And how much is the cost of this?
Just to go under the Connecticut River from the Saybrook train station, a little bit, I guess that would be east of the Saybrook train station, and then come up somewhere in the center of Old Lyme's historic district. They're estimating at $10 billion. And we all know, if we look at the history of tunnels in cities, for example, Boston, those things tend to not stay under budget.
All right, I know that we're going to have a lot of participating here, so I'm going to go to the co-chairs to see if they'd like to say a few comments, and we'll go to the members here. So Senator Leone, followed
Thank
by
you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, our co-chair, Senator Boucher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Senator. Good to see you, and thank you for bringing this topic up, because we as transportation, I think just about anyone who follows transportation in the state, we've been following this issue. And when they did come out with the public notification of this plan, for those that weren't following it, it just seemed to come out and say, this is what we're doing, and then we'll accept public input. And I think my chair asked the question sort of where I was going to go, was how far in advance did we know that they were looking at that particular line? And it seems to me like they are moving ahead whether we like it or not. And I just want to make sure that we do hold them accountable and we come up with alternatives if an alternative is necessary, or if we, as you say, need to just invest in our existing infrastructure if we can improve our time, especially if it's only 20 minutes. So that doesn't seem to me to justify, you know, a $10 billion investment. So the question is, when were the communities, yourself or not, really brought up to speed on this proposal, or was it just they pitched this idea and then they're doing it sort of backwards?
But my recollection is our first press conference as a team united in opposition against this occurred approximately a year ago, maybe 13 months ago, and it came out, I believe, sometime in December over the Christmas holidays, and it was, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to go about it. And at first, the thinking is, well, it's ridiculous. I've been using the word absurd, that we'd even consider something like this, but it seemed to gather some type of momentum in that they weren't going to change their viewpoint. So it was very quick, and the level of opposition rose so that during the comment period, I believe there were 1,200 comments just from the town of Old Lyme itself. And as this idea has generated, so has the opposition moving north. And I'm sure you'll hear from a number of people in the Mystic Westerly group today that are opposed as well. So they've not been very forthcoming.
Thank you. And I think we have a little bit of a road to travel, so to speak, on this topic, considering that this is supposed to be interconnected between multi-states, right? It's connecting New York to Massachusetts, so we're in between. And we have a new administration down in D.C., so we have a few moving parts that are sort of new members, so we're going to have to work with them, and hopefully they will be as supportive on finding something other than what's being proposed to help us out, because it is being driven by the federal government at this point in time, so we need to make sure we come up with a good plan that's bipartisan. So I appreciate your efforts, and I think a lot of the members here would tend to be supportive as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Leone. Senator Boucher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing actually 3 very important issues to the committee and your point of view. Have you, as a group, been in contact along with your federal representatives to the new potential head of the transportation office up at the federal level about this particular issue?
I understand that Senator Blumenthal, in his position on the Transportation Committee, has talked to the people in charge of the FRA and those high-level people up there. I'm sure Congressman Courtney has as well. They sent a representative down, Madam Co-Chair, to Old Lyme to just kind of present the plan and not, really take a lot of input. So, really, this has been a grassroots growing opportunity for people to be against this, and we hope we're getting the ear of the people you suggest.
Well, there may be an opportunity because I understand a very seasoned individual that has been at the federal.
I can't hear you.
There may be an opportunity, given that there is a new administration and with someone that has had quite a bit of experience at the national level, has had that position before, that may give a different point of view, could potentially open the door. I know that they came, I followed it closely, that they came to present their case for what they wanted. And that's too often the case sometimes with bureaucracy. They already predetermine the solution to something without really taking into consideration local input, which is exceedingly important in this case. So that would be some of the suggestions, but I think you'll get a pretty friendly hearing on this particular bill that we have before us. On the other one that you talked about, which was Senate Bill 253, regarding requiring municipal approval of rail service before moving forward, have you all discussed when proposing this bill how this might impact, say, a regional change or approach? Oftentimes when you're talking about rail lines, it's not a one municipality line, it spans an entire state, many communities. So how would you balance the needs of the overall commuting public versus what the local issues are?
Thank you for that question, and I appreciate that viewpoint, and as I said in my testimony, this particular bill may be worded overly broad, so that if we were to narrow it down to focus against some of these more outrageous opportunities that are being presented from the federal level down to us, I think we would be united and that very few people would be opposed, and that's really the point of it. We certainly don't want to tie hands of regionalization or opportunities to improve the mode of transportation from your neck of the woods to our neck of the woods, because we think that's important to move people, especially if it gets them off I-95.
Thank you for that. And your final bill concerning driving under the influence with a child, you talked a great deal about someone that may be intoxicated, that were drinking alcohol. Does your bill also, though, consider that someone could be impaired because they're drugged driving as well, rather than just drunk driving?
Thank you. This came from a local police chief in the 28th district that thought that the opportunity for penalties could be a lot stronger in relation to alcohol. In relation to drugs, I don't know that there's a specific test that can be relied on, and if there is, I certainly would be in favor of including that in this legislation, because the idea is to protect kids and kind of get drunk drivers off the road. We've made some headwinds into doing that over the last decade or so, but certainly not enough.
So would you be in favor if the language was written so that it's a little broader than just drunk driving?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Coach.
Thank you, Senator Boucher. Representative Carney, followed by Representative Attabello.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for coming here today to testify. I know we've been working very hard on this with several other federal and state and local officials, including First Selectman Ream-Snyder and Mayor Pastro, who just walked in. So I just have a few questions for you. First of all, and we've had discussions on this, on Senate Bill 253 and 263. To me, and I agree with you, we want to try to make it a little bit more specific, but I was thinking something along the lines of the laying down of new tracks where there weren't tracks previously might be something where these bills could come into play. Would you agree with that, or anything additional to that?
Again, one of the things that we need to be concerned ourselves as we pass legislation both on the local and state and federal level is the law of unintended consequences, and it's very hard to try to figure that out. So does that mean, 2 tracks in a little bypass fixing old track? We'd have to kind of make sure that we were mindful of that, but I agree. I think the purpose of it is to try to get this, this new barreling through of new track through, certainly environmentally sensitive and historic districts and people's homes and businesses. I think that's what we're trying to oppose. So we need probably someone smarter than me to develop that language.
There's nobody smarter than you, Senator. Yeah, because one of the things that I've heard in the community is folks are really concerned, not necessarily about tomorrow, but potentially 20, 25, 30 years from now could, when we're long gone from the legislature, could, somebody else come in and say they want it and try to ram that through. How do you feel the process has gone with the Federal Railroad Administration and their process with the community in southeastern Connecticut? Have they done? Do you think it's been a good process? They've really let people know, or it's sort of been a flawed one?
This seems to have been, certainly something done in the dark of night, and without real good public participation. As I said, a lot of the initiatives have come over holiday seasons on Friday afternoons, and it's just not the way that it was done. We heard whisperings about what was going on, and had it not been the effort, through the efforts of volunteers like Greg Stroud from seacoast.org, who has provided, it's a great website for you to go on and get some detailed information on that, to really raise the awareness, and then getting people like, the mayors and first selectmen involved, using their influence, and certainly you and me and Senator Summers as well, to come up against this, along with our federal delegation. This probably would have already passed if there had not been, because it would have just gone without much notice.
Right, and I agree, and I was very frustrated, as were you, when they released their preferred alternative. I believe it was a week prior to Christmas, so I thought that was pretty concerning. Do you know about how much has been spent on the study thus far by the federal government?
Whatever they spent on this bypass portion was too much.
Too much.
But I've heard in the millions of dollars, and again, this is an all-encompassing Northeast Corridor plan, so some of which, makes some sense. But it's planning for these types of documents, as we know in small communities with plans of conservation and development, and on the state level, it's an extensive and expensive proposition. So it's been a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money. I know there's in southeastern Connecticut, there's pretty much, as far as I've heard, universal support, support in opposition to this bypass proposal. But have you heard any support for the bypass in the state of Connecticut at all?
I did get an email this morning from one woman who said that I shouldn't be concerned about what happens in the wealthy towns, and it should just go right through them. But short of that, no, I've had no one say that they're in favor of this particular bypass. Although everyone, when you ask what the alternative is, because you can't just say we're against, we have to say here's the solution. Let's fix what we have. Let's upgrade the commuter rail all the way up from, say, New Haven up through Westerly and into Providence, and kind of work off that, and then look to other high-speed opportunities that may be able to be presented through the state. But no, I've not heard anybody really in favor
so that's
of
about
this.
1 out of 10,000, we should say, or maybe more.
Probably more than 10,000.
Probably more than 10,000. All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony, Senator. And I co-introduced the bills with you, so I am in full support. And this is something that I know has affected my community a great deal. Home values, they just did an article in the New London Day where they highlighted home sales in the town of Old Lyme have reduced. There's no way to say for sure whether it's because of this bypass proposal, but there is probably at least some of those have been affected due to the threat of this proposal, which I referred to as a dark cloud hanging over the community. So I look forward to working with you and First Selectman Ream-Snyder and everybody else in a bipartisan fashion to really get this bypass proposal removed from the final document that may come out next month, maybe a little later than that. We're not sure. To really get that taken out for the better of our communities and really the state of Connecticut. So thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Attabello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon.
Senator, I know you said that the proposed bill was somewhat broad and it would need to be sharpened up somewhat. Who has jurisdiction over that line? Who's the owner?
Jurisdiction over,
The line.
my expectation, it would be the state DOT in conjunction with Amtrak, I would expect in certain
Well,
areas. But
it's usually one or the other.
yeah, I don't,
You don't know who owns the line?
it owns the current line or the proposed line? I'm not sure
The
who's.
current line.
The current line, I believe, is a combination of both, and I don't know if somebody knows, maybe they can help me with that. But
I'm being whispered from the back by someone from DOT that it is Amtrak. So I guess the next question I have is that if that were indeed the case, it would be nice to have municipalities do a referendum, but I don't know that it would have any effect. If it's an Amtrak project, I mean, if it's a DOT project, it would be a different story. So I was just wondering about that.
well, now that you bring that up, that lets me wonder about how we can still stop opportunities that are absurd, whether they're owned by Amtrak or the state DOT. We should be able to do something.
I hear you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Attabello. And then, Representative Attabello, that is a good question in regards to whether a referendum, that's something maybe the legal minds here can find out for you, Senator. Representative Steinberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, for raising this very important issue. A lot of the focus has been on the southeastern part of the state, but people should also realize, including my Fairfield County colleagues, that there's another section proposed of new track in our neck of the woods in southwestern Connecticut. For example, it would require a whole new set of tracks running right through the Saugatuck section of Westport, which is very concerning. We're right in the middle of a transit-oriented development process that this would totally upend. So I think we all are sympathetic to the federal government's goal of creating high-speed rail to really reinvigorate New England by making it easier to get from here to there, particularly from New York to Boston. But they seem to be very short on details. That's precisely why some of these things are necessary. I happen to think that your Senate Bill 253 in concept should return some degree of home rule or control, particularly over land use issues in our communities. And I would hope that all my colleagues are as concerned as I am. Even if this is 20 years out, this is still something we all need to be on top of right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And, Representative, you bring up a very good point, because it could happen to any of us here, any community, and we have to be cognizant of all that. So thank you for those comments. Representative Storm?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, good morning. I just have a question on